please. First. All right. Good morning, everyone. Hello, hello. Nice to see you. Also nice to see the ones who are, I hope, safe and sound in Istanbul. So yeah, all right. Can you please, okay, I will just ask to mute. Who is with the microphone on? Alejandro, sorry. Yeah, all good, all good. Perfect. Hello, everyone. So let's start another day, another sleigh. Today we are, as you may notice, we're in week 3, and we're going into the topic of teams and founders and development and growth. So I think that this is a very important subject to start to, not with fundraising or not with sales and marketing, but just like overall to synchronize before you go through and jump this leap and catch the wave and conquer the market, to kind of look at your culture and look at your HR basics in a very narrow sense. Of course, I'm speaking about that. And I'm happy to present today Amelia, who was a dearest colleague of mine from the times of female founders when we were working in one company, and who is a marketing and HR professional. And now Amelia will tell more about culture and about how to make it work, because I think that both marketing and HR sides of Amelia helps her and helps us to kind of understand the needs of the startup founders even more. So as usual, we would really appreciate the cameras on, the mics off. So the ones who are without cameras, if possible, please just turn it on. And thank you so much for the ones who are already with the camera and we see your nice Friday faces. Perfect. Thank you so much. And Amelia, I'm giving the floor to you.
Great. So let me just make sure that I can share my screen here. Okay.
Yep, all good. We see the slide.
Perfect. So you should see basically a full screen.
And now we see the speakers mode.
Okay, then I will switch my screen. Okay, that should be the right one now, right?
Yeah.
Okay,
perfect.
Cool. So hi everyone. Thanks, Irina, for the invite. Today, I'm going to be talking to you about leading and growing your team, especially when you're thinking about expansion in the future. So a little bit about me. I'm currently a growth advisor to startups and SMEs. I'm focused on growth strategies with 2 areas of focus on marketing and people. And my background has been in employer branding. That's where I got my start. So very much have an understanding of how to position you as a top place to work. I've also been on multiple different hiring panels, so have a lot of experience across the board in all different sizes of companies. The smallest startup I worked for was with 3 full-time employees, all the way up to 1,500 when I worked at TripAdvisor in the US. I always say I have a global experience, but specifically when I talk about HR legal topics, my main expertise really lies in the DACH region, so Germany and Austria, and also within the US. I do have at the end a couple of resources, since I know this is a global group, on what type of resources that you could use if, for example, you need legal advice outside of those areas. I always like to include, since we are people beyond what we do at work, so a couple of things about me outside of just day-to-day. I love food. I love cappuccinos, especially not because of the coffee, but because of the milk froth. I'm a big milk froth person. Love being outside, love outdoors, and love being creative. So I know before we kick off the agenda, would love to kind of get a vibe check on the group itself. So I know it's Friday, at least here in Vienna, it's very rainy and a little bit depressing, but would love to know in the chat if you want to just put a number. So on the sheep scale today, how are you feeling on this Friday? So for me, I would say I'm probably, I don't know, probably between a 3 and a 5 today, but would love to know how all of you are doing. We got some sleepy 5s. Yeah, the 3 is just awesome with the hair. Definitely 4. 2. We got some happy sheeps, some silly sheeps. Great. So a little mix of everything. Perfect. So we're gonna have today also a little interactive part and pieces that we'll look at with the case study. So hopefully if you're feeling a little bit sleepy or a little crazy like the sheep number 3, we can help address that. Okay. So what we're going to talk about today, I basically have 3 main areas that I'll focus on. And after each of these areas, I'll take a break. And if you have questions, happy to get into those. Or if you have experience yourself that you would like to share, I think that's always helpful in the group. If, for example, you've had good experiences, bad experience with hiring practices, I think it's always great that we're able to share it because all of us have experience, I think, here. So the first point I'll get into is just prefacing culture, since this is really the place for everything that you do. So that's the foundation. Then we'll go into how to grow your team, especially when you think about expansion. I'll talk here through a case study, so we'll work on something together. And this is really to help. I know it at times may seem in terms of case studies, well, why do we do a case study on Friday? But it's really helpful to think through all the different points I'll talk about when it comes to workforce planning. And then I'll talk about some hiring tips and tricks, so some best practices from my end. And I'll wrap it all up with a couple tools that I recommend that I've used in the past that are really great in terms of culture. And also when you decide to scale, what are some things that you consider as a next step? Perfect. So starting with culture. So I'm sure this quote isn't something that's necessarily new to any of you. This has been around for quite a while from the Peter Drucker book. But basically the quote says, culture eats strategy for breakfast. And this implies that, right, the culture of your company always determines how successful you'll be, regardless of what your strategy is. And again, this just highlights when you think about hiring in teams and growing, it's really about focusing on, right, not the comfy chairs, not the happy hours at the office, even though those are all important, but it's rather thinking about how your employees act or how you act in critical situations. So how do you manage pressure? How do you deal with conflict? How do you treat partners and customers and also each other? And I know this is probably the last thing that you're thinking about when growing organization. It's a lot of misconceptions, or people think that, well, we bring a team together, the culture is just going to happen, even if you're a small, maybe group of 3. But this is a misconception, right? Because as you start to grow and as you start to scale, the way that you behave with those employees, or maybe just the 2 founders at the beginning, is how you're going to set the stage for your teams moving forward. So it's not another misconception I hear. It's not an HR topic, so you don't wait to think about your culture when you hire HR. So really think about how you work together and how you describe that, and start to build off of that when thinking about your culture. And just to reiterate, culture, a lot of the times people think it's the benefits, the things that you give your employees or the things that you're doing, but it's really, at the end of the day, loosely defined how you work together as a team. So it's about how you treat the people, how you hire, how you recruit talent. So it's also about the interactions that you have during the interviews with the people that you're looking to hire. Because I know, especially in the past, if you don't have a good hiring process, that could lead to other people maybe not recommending your organization in the future. So the last thing I'll say here when touching upon culture is it really is something to think about that drives business results. So think about it as, okay, maybe your business strategy is something where you're very transparent in the way that you're built, or you work with your customers in order to create your specific projects. This could be, for example, maybe the culture of customer focus or the customers first. And this breathes into your culture. So think about it rather intentionally in terms of what are the things that set us apart from other organizations and other startups. So this is the last thing I'll say here about culture. I'll just take a quick pause. Again, just think about it over the next couple of weeks to kind of start to define, I would say, as the next step here with culture, just write down a few couple of words. How do we interact? How do we make decisions? And how do we work with our team to really define that? Okay, so now that we have that as a base layer, so now that we have culture, let's get into the meat of this presentation. So how do you grow your team through expansion? When it comes to workforce planning, there is a framework called the 7R framework. And 7R meaning 7 right things. So right people, right skills, shape, size, time, place, and cost. So of course, these are all things to consider when considering how to build your team moving forward. And we'll look at each one of these, but it's really about, again, going back to your business strategy and looking at, okay, over the next 6 months, over the next year, what are the areas that we're going to be focused on? Is it the product? Are we doubling down on marketing? And then looking to fill those skills. And so I know this is a lot, and this can be a tough nut to crack. So we're going to go step by step. And I'm going to go through basically my top 4 rules when it comes to workforce planning. And then this is where we'll take a look at a case study so you can see how you would answer these questions if you were these 2 startups. So the first one, I think I say this all the time, but really start from your business plan when considering where to start with building out your team. So first is, if you're thinking about expanding to a different country, what are you looking to expand into? Or what type of skills or what type of area in your business are you looking to double down on? So again, is that your product? Is that sales? Is that marketing? And what's the business goal? I know this can change, obviously, depending on the feedback that you get, but looking out for the next quarter, what are the business goals that you're trying to hit? When looking at operations, a lot of the times with remote work, this is also something to consider, which I'll talk about a little bit later about how you can do this. Do you want this person or this new hire to be on site with you? Do you want them to be remote? What is basically the right location for your next hire? Then, of course, how fast do you need to grow? Always I think the biggest question that comes down, because I know I've been there where someone leaves the organization or you have an immediate need and you need to hire very, very fast. That process is going to be very different than having the chance to say, okay, in 6 months, we're going to need this resource and being able to slowly hire for that person. And then the last one is, of course, what are the best and worst case growth scenarios, looking at it financially, right? Because a lot of times it could be grow, 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 grow. We're going to grow super fast. And maybe we're not able to keep the amount of people that we recently have hired. So thinking about those best and worst case scenarios of workforce planning is also very helpful. Okay, time to practice. I'm going to give you 2 startups. I'll talk a little bit about them. They're made up, but based on companies that I've worked with. And then we'll look through each of these workforce planning with these 2 startups. Okay, so the 2 startups are EcoCharge and HealthFlow. And these 2 startups are based in Austria, where I am currently based. EcoCharge, in short, is a renewable energy startup. HealthFlow is a health tech startup. So you don't have to read more into this. We'll do this on the next slide. So these are basically the two startups that we're going to think about when we're thinking about workforce planning. Okay, so what we're going to do here is I will give you the next 2 minutes or so, read through these two very, very simple business plans for EcoCharge and HealthFlow, and then we'll talk about the first part of this question of on-site operations and where these two startups should hire. So I'll give you 2 minutes now, just read through basically the top things here, and then we'll discuss it. Okay, so would love to hear in the chat first, or you can also unmute yourself and let me know what you think. So we'll first look at EcoCharge. EcoCharge, they are based in Austria, but they are seeing some good traction in the US, so they want to grow in the US. For EcoCharge, what is, for example, where should they start to hire their employees? And if so, what's the right location here? Texas, perfect. Anyone else have other hubs that they would think about in the US? California. Yep. Those were basically my two ones that I was thinking as well. So for them, it could be, for example, the San Francisco Bay Area for tech talent or specific industry networks there. Of course, we'll talk a little bit how you can factor in cost. Texas is a great one, especially Austin, when we're thinking about proximity to the solar market growth. So those would be basically two areas that they could think about here. Okay. So now looking at it from HealthFlow perspective. So where could HealthFlow look at potentially hiring their first team members? And again, they're based right now in Austria.
Accents are very different, I would say.
Yes, they're very, very different from Austria to Germany. I can definitely attest to that. But Germany obviously would be the one here. So for this first step, very, very easy in terms of thinking about, where you want to hire. So it could be, someone said Munich or Hamburg. It could be, for example, Berlin, in terms of tech talent and healthcare. But it really depends on where they're going to find that talent. So that would be the first step, figuring out, do you need on-site operations? Is it going to be in your local market? Is it going to be somewhere else? All right, so check, we did that. Rule number 2, always assess your headcount and your skill gap. And this is very critical when we're thinking about what your current workforce can handle. So looking at your current team, how much can they actually handle? So look at it in terms of areas of growth. So it might make sense, maybe looking forward, especially when it comes to cost. It might not make sense to hire someone full-time, but rather look for a freelancer first to work on a specific project and then consider if you need that full-time employee. The second one is, of course, what critical skills are missing. So considering where you're going to be expanding and focusing on next. If you're looking to expand into a new country, what are the ones that must be in this new country? So of course, for example, if you're looking to expand in the US, maybe you need someone, a salesperson that's on the ground in that country, instead of having someone remote somewhere else. Okay, so the next part of the case study is critical skills. So let's take a look at both of them again. So EcoCharge right now, their core team based in Austria can handle product development and core operations, but they really are lacking the skills in the US. Versus HealthFlow, also their current team can handle core operations, but they're also looking here for expansion in Germany and the legal implications there. So this again goes back to the overall case study. This is something, again, very straightforward. If you have that business case here, okay, the roles that we need to think about is, for example, EcoCharge, they're going to be hiring people in the US, maybe a US country manager or a sales director. Versus HealthFlow is going to be maybe looking at someone on the ground in Germany that can focus on German healthcare regulations or local knowledge. So really consider when you're looking for your team members or your new people in the team, which roles can be in that specific country. Perfect. So rule number 3 out of 4 is getting very clear on buying or building. And this, I know, probably is something that's considered a lot when you're actually thinking about your SaaS tools or anything that you're going to do. You can think of this concept the same way when you're going to your team. So do we build? So do you bring someone on the team, invest in growing them into their roles, or do we buy? So maybe that's considering someone at a more senior level, but again, this comes with additional cost. So the question that I'd ask here is thinking about that first. So can we afford someone in the senior role with that competitive salary? Do we need someone that has really, really lots of years of expertise in terms of what we're doing? Or can we hire someone more junior and assume they're going to learn what we do in our business, they're going to grow and be able to get to that senior role when we need them in the next 2 or 3 years? Big one when you're looking, of course, across the world and remote work is, are the roles that you're looking for available and also affordable in the market? So always take a look. I'll give you some tools in the next couple of slides of areas that you can look just to see how much employees cost in each country. Because a wonderful country like ours in Austria is one of the highest prices because there's a lot of different types of things that the employer has to pay into. Are you able to hire remotely and utilize price arbitration? So this is something that you can do called an employee of record, or EOR. And this is a third-party organization that legally employs, for example, a new employee in a different country than your own, where you don't have a legal presence there. So this could be a really great option. I've worked in the past with WorkMotion to be able to hire someone, for example, in France, when we didn't have a legal entity in France and we were based in Austria. And then the last thing when you're thinking also about buy and build is how much time do you have? So maybe you don't have the time to have someone very junior join your team. You need someone that already has the skills in your industry. So then that would automatically go to maybe someone more, hiring someone more senior. And of course, considering the skills here. Okay, so last little review that we'll do on EcoCharge and HealthFlow. So Again, we'll look at these two, EcoCharge and HealthFlow, from a specific affordability, what they should be doing in terms of remote work. So I will give you, again, 2 minutes to just read through what their time frame is, where they're looking to develop, and we'll talk through how they could think about maybe hiring remotely or specifically maybe in the employees that they have. So I'll give you 2 minutes here again.
I'm very sorry. Can you a little bit elaborate it, just to have more understanding? Yeah.
Yeah. So for these two, what we're going to take a look at. So for EcoCharge here, they're looking to enter the US. So basically what we're going to consider here is, are they able to hire for remote roles? So here, basically in this case study, we're just going to think about, are they able to hire remotely? Because the US, for example, for them, it might be more expensive to hire talent in the US than their local market in Austria. So we're just going to think through maybe what type of roles that they could potentially hire remotely and not in the US, just to take advantage of maybe lower, being able to pay lower salaries, for example.
So it's binary, like remote hire, yes or no, and for which role, right?
Exactly. Yep.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, does anyone have any initial thoughts? First, let's talk through EcoCharge. They're basically looking to enter the US market in 18 months. What type or where could they potentially hire remote roles for? Because we talked about in the past that with EcoCharge, that they're able to do their core operations. They don't need that in the US. So what type of roles could they potentially hire remotely? Could be any of those. Yes, definitely. Sales director, technical field reps, they have to be on site in target states for EcoCharge. Remote roles, they could think about product development and maybe also marketing being remote and sourced from Europe or from Asia, wherever they have the most team members. And let's then take a look at HealthFlow. So HealthFlow is also looking for expansion somewhere else. They're looking to enter Germany. So where could they potentially look at hiring remote roles? Yeah, exactly. So the things that you need in the local market, that's what you'll do in the local market. For HealthFlow, for example, any technical roles or software development, this again can be used with EOR, so employee of record, which I'll talk about in a bit, and also source that somewhere else. Okay, so final rule here about workforce planning is, I would say this is actually one of the most important steps, and one that's definitely forgotten at times, is do your homework on the current market that you're looking to hire from. So think about the cultural and legal considerations. Do a labor market analysis. If, for example, you're based somewhere and you're going to hire in a market that you don't really know, get an understanding of the talent availability, what does salary look like? And I'll show you one slide on somewhere that you can look for this. Of course, any sort of regulatory issues, specific labor laws, this is really, really crucial, and something that, for example, an employee of record can help with. And if you don't want to completely burn your money, there's a few things that I would specifically watch out from the legal side. So when you're looking at, in general, it doesn't matter if you're expanding into a different country or if you're just looking to hire someone in your current local market, what are the types of contracts that are out there? Make sure that this is very sound, because I know that I've worked at startups in the past where we've had very interesting ways of putting together contracts, but this could be just a quick asking founders in your network or other people that you know and asking them for contracts just to make sure legally that everything is set up properly. Holiday allowances, this again is completely different across different countries. Make sure you're aware with what the legal laws are here. Misclassification of workers and contractors, especially in Austria and Germany, we're really, really specific on what type of level, what type of seniority people are, and this impacts the minimum salary that you need to pay them. And I've run into issues like this in the past just because in the US, we don't have something like this in terms of classifying specific workers. So especially if you're looking at the DACH region, make sure that you are considering this. Any sort of minimum wage collectives, collective agreements, any type of salary schemes, pay differences for weekday versus weekend. What do employees actually cost, which I'll show you on the next slide. Any types of termination, I think I would always make sure you're looking at this because different countries have different types of termination. And even though we want the people that we hire to make sure that they succeed, but you also need to make sure that you're protecting yourselves in terms of if that person doesn't work out, how do we make sure that we follow the rules in terms of terminating them? And any types of other contract nuances, which I'll also share some legal tips later. This is a chart by Boundless. I will also send this link to Arena afterwards. This is a really great tool to use when considering, okay, I want to hire someone remotely to really be able to access that price arbitration, maybe look at someone that has a lot of experience, but maybe you can't pay the US salaries, so we're looking somewhere else. This is just looking at Europe, but Boundless also has research done across the US, Asia, so you can take a look at this resource to get an understanding of what do salaries look like and what does actually someone cost. And when I say actually someone costs, is because, for example, in Austria, we are the highest when it comes to additional money that you have to pay in for the employee. So you could, for example, be giving someone a 60,000 euro salary, but it costs you actually 88,000, just because of all the things like healthcare that you pay into, pensions, unemployment support, etc. So definitely take a look at how much the actual cost is per employee. And Boundless is a really good resource. And Boundless is also, for example, if you're looking to hire someone that's not in your current market, that you don't have a legal entity in, you can use them to basically hire them. Okay, last thing I'll say here is there are some, of course, alternatives that you can think about when hiring your first team members. Is, of course, if you're focused on your current local market, you can hire based on where you are. So for me, if I have my startup based here in Austria, maybe I'm looking for team members here. This would be great because we can see each other more often. But the problem is if I'm looking to expand someone else, like in the US, maybe we don't have the local knowledge. Another thing you can consider is freelancers or contractors at the beginning. So this might be something interesting to start if, for example, you're looking to expand very fast, you have a current need that's really, really burning. Using a freelancer or using a contractor gives you obviously that more flexibility. It's great in the short term and helps you solve for that specific skill set. Another thing that we just talked about that you can consider, right, is sourcing remotely. This is great if you're thinking about maybe a specific team member, so growing maybe your product development, your marketing, etc. But I would really consider, for example, leadership team, how they basically do or you specifically with remote work. So making sure you have everything set up that you can be efficient and work across potentially different time zones. And the last one, an employee of record. I keep saying this because I think it's really, really helpful when it comes to considering opening up or having talent from across the world. Of course, this could be higher costs because you are paying a third party to do all the legal topics for you. And that means maybe no hassle for you when it comes to payroll and paying that person, but you are using a third party tool in order to do that. Okay. So before I go through more strategically how to hire and how to look for people, I just wanted to take a quick pause here just to make sure that there's no questions or thoughts on this. And maybe just for my knowledge too, if you want to just give me like a yes in the chat if you're looking to maybe hire your first couple of team members. So if you're in a hiring phase right now, just write yes in the chat just because I'm curious.
Or you can just unmute yourself and... Oh, well.
Right now.
I like the comment.
Gonna hire 5+. Perfect. AI agents, yeah. I think this is, again, cost-benefit analysis and thinking about what are the things, especially for AI agents. I think there are some things, for example, like specific marketing types, processes, and things like that, that I think AI agents could be great for. Again, I think it depends as we move forward with AI just getting better and smarter. I think we're going to be using this way more and really hiring for people that are really thinking about the overall strategy of the company and the kind of day-to-day, the weeds, I would say the more manual type of things. I could definitely see AI agents taking this over. But let's see, maybe in the future, AI also is more strategic as well. Let's see. Great. Then let's talk specifically on hiring tips and tricks. So when I think about hiring, I think about a couple things to consider. We talked about looking at workforce planning, so I won't get into that. The second one is your job description and your template. I'll show you a scorecard that you can use, and then you can just pop this into ChatGPT to basically create your job description here. Another big thing I would consider when you're talking about hiring is I think a lot of people miss this step. So they get excited about, right, you've your job application out there. People are starting to apply or excited about bringing people in to interview them, but really think through from A to B how this process is going to look like. So for example, let's just say I'm looking for my next CFO. I don't have a recruiter. I'm just a one-woman show. So I'm going to be the person that's going to be screening them for a first 15-minute call. And then I'm going to bring them in and meet them, have them meet my advisory boards. Maybe that's the second step. And then the third step is one final call where we discuss through a case study together. So really think about, even if it's really short, even if it's just you that's hiring your first people, what does that process look like? So you can make sure that you're really structured in planning out those different interviews and those different phases. The last one, which I'll go into later, so making sure that you understand the compensation that you're going to be looking at, and we'll talk about equity in a bit. And the last one, onboarding plan. I know this is something more so for bigger organizations, but really think about the first week that person is there. What are the people that you want to make sure that they meet? So if it's maybe specific clients of yours, your advisory board, making sure they have the right tools to get them set up for success. I know in startups, I've been in a lot of different roles where you just join, you have to just hit the ground running. That's how it's going to be. But if you can make it in that first week that you're suggesting them to meet different people, whether it's your clients, your board, etc., this could be very, very helpful for them. So this is a place where I would start thinking about hiring, is a hiring scorecard. So this helps you to get your head around what is this, especially in your first hires, to really understand what are you exactly looking for and how you can interview this person. So the first one would be defining what is the mission for this role. So why is this role existing? And this is a great exercise because it helps you to really find what is the burning skills and what is the person that I need for this. What are the outcomes? So what do you want this specific role and this person to achieve? Is it helping to launch a major product? Is it helping to create your first marketing objectives, or is there a specific sales target that they have to hit? And then their competencies. So how would you basically describe the person that you're looking for? And again, this goes back to your culture. Is your culture one of constant learning and being transparent? So showcasing your learnings and how you're growing as a company. These are all things that I would put on this hiring scorecard. And once you have this, you can pop this into ChatGPT, for example, and ask, hey, I'm looking for interview questions based on these inputs. So these will help you think about more interesting interview questions based upon the people that you're looking for. Okay, so next we'll go into actually how do you find the talent that you're looking for. And I think a little bit as a little iceberg when we're talking about the candidate experience, right? Because you're finding the talent, you have the experience of the interview, and then you're going to close them at the end. Luckily, since the last time I've done this specific slide, things have changed quite a bit in the market. And I find for what I'm seeing now, especially when looking for talent, depending on what type of talent you're looking for, there's definitely, I would say the employers definitely have the advantage or the upper hand now. So I would think about first, target your channels. I've seen some really great success from founders that I've worked for just posting it at LinkedIn. So not LinkedIn jobs, but just doing a LinkedIn post to say, hey, I'm looking for XYZ talents. Does anyone in my network know someone that's great? I've seen these posts work really, really well in terms of suggesting new people. And this, you don't even need to put into money on LinkedIn. So you don't have to do it for LinkedIn jobs. So I would definitely look at what type of things you can do as referrals. If you wanted to do like job boards there, but really think about what people are you looking to hire and where do they hang out? So maybe they're not on LinkedIn, maybe they're on GitHub, maybe they're on Reddit. But nowadays, I would say I would focus a lot on referrals, especially for maybe your first couple of I would say team members. And the reason I say this is because a lot of times I've just found success on doing those quick hires like this. This also, maybe it's not, for example, LinkedIn, maybe it's also X or other type of platforms here when looking for your talent. The third one, the best ones are the recommendations. So the conferences that you go to, the clients that you meet, the people that you work with that are not on your team can be great places to ask if they know someone. And then the last one, if you're really looking for someone specific, recruitment firms can also be a great place. But again, as really small teams of 1 to 2 people, I would really focus on looking at your network, maybe trying a job board here or there in order to get that job posting out. So now we talked about, so you've looking at hiring someone. Now we're talking about the overall candidate experience. So really thinking about setting the right expectations. So knowing, again, what your timeline is, what does the overall hiring process need to look like? And this is something that you can automate, right? If you're getting, for example, applications into a specific email address, you can automate that the email says, hey, great, we got your application. We're going to get in touch in the next couple of weeks. Be transparent about, especially when you're interviewing. I think it's really great. And I've seen for really top candidates that are looking to work at startups, talk about the problems that you're going through, talking about the things that you're wanting to grow and wanting to do, because this also creates motivation and excitement for working for you. Create delight. I think this is something that's easily skipped, but super nice when you're hiring someone, if you're about to close an offer, or you've closed an offer with someone, to just send them a quick card of, hey, we're really excited for you to join. Something super quick, super fast that you can do that creates that delight. And the short hiring process, usually in the past, it's 2 weeks would be a really efficient interview process. But again, I would say 2 weeks to 4 weeks. When you have all those applications and you start doing your interview, you really want to target that to make sure it's moving forward for the candidate, but it's also moving forward for you. And the last piece before I go into some final thoughts is closing the candidate. So understand the person's needs when you're going through the interview process. Really get specific on what that they're interested in, right? Maybe the salary that they want is not something that you can offer them, but maybe there are things like flexibility or more vacation days or flexibility in the summer that you can offer them. Definitely personalize it based on what they say in the interview, and look at different types of tools to consider what is the market compensation and what is the salary that you can offer. Of course, this depends on your budget. A lot of the times it's going to say, okay, well, I only have this amount of money to allocate to this person. Okay, that's what you're going to be using. If you're able to be more flexible, it could be starting looking at, for example, the Glassdoors of the world, where people can enter in their salaries, is a good place to start to get a market compensation. I would also recommend talk to other founders to get a sense of what they're offering for full and part-time. And the last things that I would do here is the biggest thing is thinking about equity as a big way to close someone, right? They can be engineer number 10,000 at Google, but if they work for us, you'll be able to build this ground up and have equity. Another great tool that you can use, which I'll mention in just a second, is something called Figures, which you can get benchmarks on what salaries look like across the board in different types of skills. Okay, so some final things before we wrap up and maybe go into more specifics. Is when you're thinking about workforce planning, making sure that you're prioritizing for the next 12 months. If you're moving very fast, this might be something that you're thinking about on a quarterly basis. So what type of skills and attributes do I need in a candidate to get there? The second one, defining the ideal candidate. So where are we going to find them? Where are we going to look? And the last thing I'll say before I just go into some tips and resources and then questions is culture. I always say don't hire jerks because they will break your culture and cost way more than they're worth. So really think about focusing on behaviors of that person versus potentially thinking about the skills and knowledge that you can teach. So a couple things that I will leave here with you. There's some legal resources here, especially focused on the EU, if that's something that you're interested in. HR tools that I would recommend here. The first to help you track applicants. The last one, this work motion. This is great if you're thinking about hiring someone outside of where you're currently legally based. I would also recommend here, which we looked at before, Boundless is also a great tool that you can use. Some culture tools, I would say think about this more so when you're 10 plus employees. For example, Gather Round is great for interactive all hands. Donut, a great way to engage employees and to learn about each other, especially if they're not in the same location. And Culture Amp and Office Vibe, again, something that I would think about more in the later term. These last tools I would definitely consider using. Figures HR, this is roughly last time I used it, $120 a month. You could just use it for 1 month just to take a look at compensation, to get a sense of what a compensation look like across different types of roles, across different types of countries, if that's something that you're looking to do. And then Legi is great for equity management, especially as you bring on more team members and you're thinking about what is the equity allocation within our company. Perfect. So that was it from the content from my side. I know, again, a lot of this stuff is very broad just because it really depends on what your requirements are, where you're looking, how you're looking to scale teams. So I'm happy now to get into any specific questions that you have or that you're thinking about. And I'll also leave my email address here. Happy to answer any questions or things as well.
All right. Thank you so much, Amelia. And yes, all the slides will be there and also the recording. And we had one raised hand, I think, from Alejandro. I think that it's about equity or the question. I mean, Alejandro, feel free to comment.
So yeah, the question is, suppose that this depends or change between the person or maybe the position or maybe the company itself. But in your opinion, how much will we give for the early hires or the first team members?
Yeah. It's always right. It's always the depends, but I would consider somewhere between, I would say for me, probably somewhere around like 2%. Again, if it's someone that's going to be someone really, really critical to your team, like you're looking for your first like CFO or big one, then maybe you start to consider somewhere between 8 to 10%. But I would say at the beginning for me, I would keep it around 2%-ish.
I mean, I think that all the early team members are critical, I would say. At least the first 3, 4, 5 people.
Yeah. Yeah, so then you're probably right. If you're looking for the first like 5 people, then it's probably someone here. I mean, like it was mentioned here, probably under 1%. So maybe a 0.5%, 1, 2, if you're looking to bring in maybe the first like your 5 critical ones. But if you're really looking for example, that's someone that's going to be at the same founder level, then okay, yeah, you're looking at maybe a bit bigger percentage. But if you're looking for your first kind of critical hires, maybe it's somewhere around 0.5 percentage point to 2%.
Thank you. Also, we have a question from Alexa in the chat. I assume that some of the startups will be residents of Delaware. Are there any specifics on how to hire employees in this jurisdiction when they are located in other countries?
Yeah. So this is where I would use that employee of record concept. So if you're legally based in Delaware, obviously for tax purposes in the US, you're going to be hiring employees that are not based there. So I would use, for example, Boundless, Workmotion, to hire someone outside of that legal jurisdiction, because then you can make sure, of course, you could do this yourself, but to start out, I would definitely use a third-party tool and invest in that. Because then with this third-party tool, for example, let's just say you're hiring in a different country, they're going to take into account all the legal considerations, making sure that they're going to take over payroll. So the salary, what type of healthcare, if there's healthcare being taken out of that salary, so the actual cost of that employee, they're going to take all of that on. So I would use definitely an EOR service for hiring for that talent, at least to begin with. Because then, for example, if you have another legal entity somewhere else, so you're based in Delaware, you're based, for example, in Germany, you have a second base in Germany, then you can obviously hire talent there. But I would say to start, I would definitely use an EOR.
Alex, could you share the tools list?
Yes.
I guess it was on the slide, but
yeah. So that'll be in the deck that I sent Irina.
So yeah, on the pre-last slide, there will be, I guess, all the links, so you can just definitely click on that. All right. Any more questions, comments, maybe some of your cases for us to go through? So this does not mean that we're just can speak about, I don't know, culture and HR, but also something that you have now the struggles with, like the first employees or anything specifically advisors, also part of the team sometimes. Feel free to text in the chat or just raise your hand and share your story. I think that will be also valuable for everyone. All right, everyone is thinking about their HR cases, or already you want to be on the place of echo charge or health flow, probably. All right. We will do the auction of the questions. I mean, let's wait for a couple more seconds. And if you don't have any more questions, then we're wrapping it all up. The recording will be there for you, for your employees, for your team members, and also the list and those slides will be also available for you to use already the tools.
Yeah, and the other thing is too, since there might not be questions now because most of the times these type of things will hit when you actually start to hire for a specific team member. So I have my email address in there. So if there's ever a time, if you just have a specific question about hiring or people, you can always feel free to reach out and happy to help.
All right, we have one more question from Celine. Do you offer shares upfront or later for the first employees? I mean, you consider their performance and decide later. So
I think, again, this is a personal preference. If you're looking, I would say there's two ways of doing it. So if you're looking to close someone, so let's just say you're having a hard time, maybe it's a very senior role or a very critical hire, as you say, with this first employee, and you want to close them, equity can be in shares is something that's really considered in terms of their base compensation. So something that's very attractive. So you could think about offering that right away. Something that I've done that I personally think it's a little bit better because I am always weary is I would have a contract that talks about, for example, being able to unlock certain shares based on, for example, their first 6 months or their first year. There's specific KPIs that they have to hit in order to start that vesting period. So for me, I would personally always look at performance. But again, maybe if you're looking to close someone and you aren't able to hit the specific salary that they're looking for or need a way to make it more attractive, offering shares up front could be interesting.
All right, Celine, does that answer your question or anyone? Okay, perfect. All right, well, yeah, I see some of you are still happy sheep, some of you are still sleepy sheep, or digesting sheep. Sorry to go into the metaphor of the check-in. I really like the question. But nevertheless, thank you so much, Emilia, for sharing with us. I think like from every single point of like a perspective, from culture to specific tools, the knowledge to build the awareness. This week, the teams have also kind of a split so two tasks, assignments to create their own founder agreement and to go through the capitalization table, which is kind of, you know, two sides of being on the one side strategic, on the other side rather practical and pragmatic. So yeah, I think the summarizing also all the glue between the team members and how we can handle it really was crucial and important. So yeah, thank you so much, Emilia, and thank you so much also for giving the context. So someone who will have questions definitely will reach out to you. So yeah, with this being said, thank you everyone for participating. Today we also have the mentorship calls if you still haven't arranged anything individually. So see you probably in an hour if you have the mentorship calls. Nevertheless, wishing you all a nice afternoon and a nice weekend ahead. The weather, I suppose, would be so. Is it possible to schedule one-to-one consultation about early stage equity distribution? I don't know if it's Emilia's topic, to be honest, about equity distribution, but possibly ask your mentor first. So Olga also knows about equity distribution, one thing or two. So feel free to use your mentors first, and then come by if you have any other individual questions, and we will try to solve them as fast as possible, because we're also, as you see, every single week we're kind of on a gig here. So that's why yeah, it's important to still keep up on shape. All right, thank you so much, and then we're wrapping this session up, and have a nice afternoon, everyone.
You too. Have a nice weekend.
Bye-bye.
Bye.